My students love Lit Hour, and lately they've been especially curious about classics, those big, intimidating books they've heard about but aren't quite sure how to approach yet. So when they requested the Three Musketeers, I said yes, ordered every copy our library had, and had them delivered to our local Dropbox. When the first wave arrived, I practically skipped to the book drop, shoes forgotten, heart racing like a kid on Christmas morning. I expected cute little children's copies with cartoon swordsmen on the cover. And instead, my jaw dropped. Inside the box sat a single book, a translated copy of the original 1844 French classic by Alexandre Dumas. Enormous, hulking, slightly ridiculous. And let's be honest, it was absolutely not going to work for my kiddos. I froze, staring at it, completely bewildered, until my husband's laughter interrupted my shock. "Honey, what's wrong? Did they send the wrong one?" He chuckled from the idling car. Apparently, my reaction was far more entertaining than I realized. All I could do was nod as I slowly slipped the translation into my bag, fully intending to set it aside and ignore it amid the chaos of the holidays. About a week later, the long-awaited children's editions arrived. My relief and their delight spread through the classroom like wildfire. We drove straight into the Classic Starts version. Fast-paced, action-packed, and easy to follow. The kids were hooked immediately. Honestly, so was I. By the end of the second chapter, it was clear. I was in trouble. The story was too good to leave untouched, and I wanted to read the original. So I picked up the hulking French classic, fully expecting to skim a few chapters. But instead, I devoured it. What grabbed me wasn't just the duels or sword fights, though there were plenty of those, but the weight of the story, the loyalty, the recklessness, the consequences, how even good intentions can come at a cost, how choosing to love, fight, and stand by one another can be messy, exhausting, and beautiful all at once. And just so we're clear, this post isn't going to be a literary analysis or history lecture. I just want to share why this story grabbed me and what it quietly teaches about loyalty, evil, and the cost of really committing ourselves to others. Fact versus fiction, where history ends and storytelling begins. As I dug into the original, I realized something fascinating. Dumas' story feels vivid, romantic, and full of drama. But not everything actually happened. Some characters were real, some inspired by real people, and some, well, Dumas definitely took creative license. Take the Musketeers. The Musketeers of the Guard were real, elite, disciplined, and loyal to the king, but far less swashbuckling than the book makes them out to be. Not the reckless, romantic heroes we cheer for. They were more about following orders and keeping the kingdom running. King Louis XIII? Historically indecisive, often overshadowed by his advisors, and not exactly the bold figure you might imagine from the story. What about Queen Anne and Cardinal Richelieu? They really did have tension, but purely political, not at all like the romantic or scandalous drama Dumas invents. Richelieu himself was often painted as the ultimate villain, but in reality, he was brilliant, politically savvy, and yes, ruthless, but always in service of France and the king, not scheming for evil's sake. Dumas amps up the drama, but the real Richelieu was about duty, not revenge. And of course, Dumas leans into other dramatic flourishes. Rivalries are intensified, affairs exaggerated, timelines compressed, all to keep us glued to the story. And it worked. The takeaway? History gave Dumas a framework, but he wasn't trying to write a textbook. He wanted to explore loyalty, power, and human complexity, all while keeping us on the edge of our seats. Youth, impulse, and the slow formation of wisdom. If the Musketeers are the heart of the story, D'Artagnan is the pulse that makes it beat. He starts off young, hot-headed, and absolutely certain he knows everything, especially how to handle a duel. Quick to challenge, quick to get offended, and full of confidence he hasn't quite yet earned. Honestly, watching him stumble through the first chapters made me relate to him more than I'd care to admit. But that's where the story gets interesting. His friendships with Athos, Porthos, and Aramis start to expose his immaturity. He's forced to face loss, disappointment, and consequences he can't duel or charm his way out of. Slowly, almost without fanfare, he begins to grow. Bravado gives way to responsibility. Impulse starts to meet discernment. And the boy who thought he had all the answers begins to see the world and his place in it more clearly. By the later chapters, D'Artagnan hasn't lost his fire. He's just learned how to use it. He leads without needing to prove himself. He pauses before acting. He chooses loyalty over ego. And in those quiet moments of restraint, the story shows something rare and beautiful. Growth that doesn't look heroic in the moment, but proves heroic in the long run. Watching him evolve made me think real growth is often messy, exhausting, and slow, but it's also what shapes the people who make a story, or a life, worth following. The Musketeers. Charming, loyal, and completely exhausting. Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and the young D'Artagnan make up the core of Dumas' story, the friends whose loyalty, courage, and chaos drive the adventure. What makes them truly unforgettable isn't just their daring or their duels, it's the way they work together. Each of them brings something different to the table, and those differences become their greatest strength. Athos carries wisdom, memory, and restraint. He's the one who remembers the past and lets it guide his choices. Porthos brings boldness, strength, and confidence, the kind that can turn the tide in a fight or in life. Aramis is the strategist, the conscience, the one thinking 2 steps ahead. And D'Artagnan, he's the spark, initiative, adaptability, and the drive to keep the whole group moving forward. And yes, they're exhausting. Gambling with money they don't have, casual, often reckless relationships with women, decisions that seem brilliant in the moment but leave someone else, usually D'Artagnan, to clean up the mess. Athos, for example, once gambled away D'Artagnan's belongings, then later insisted on sharing his own winnings with his friends. Not from a sense of obligation, but simply because he wanted to. From our modern lens, it looks crazy. But really, it's just a different way of seeing the world. In their ups and downs, they celebrate each other's wins, share each other's losses, and carry one another's burdens. All for one, one for all isn't just a motto. It's a way of life. Their strength isn't just in skill. It's in shared history and the lessons of past pain. They succeed not in spite of their failures, but because of them. Every quarrel, mistake, heartbreak, and triumph has shaped them into the people who can stand together when it matters most. Take Athos, for example. His former relationship with Milady, the story's central antagonist whose schemes touch each of them, left him with a wound so deep it could have destroyed him. And yet, that pain becomes critical knowledge. It shapes his judgment, his caution, and his ability to protect the others when evil rises. It's in these broken, imperfect places, when past hurts are understood and harnessed, that real strength emerges. In the end, the Musketeers' differences, combined with their shared history, and yes, even their scars, become the very things that allow them to stand together, to fight, to protect, and to triumph where they alone could not. Their flaws, their recklessness, their courage, and their loyalty, all of it makes them come alive to the reader and ultimately makes victory possible. Evil that does not ask for sympathy. You can't break down the Three Musketeers without talking about Milady de Winter. And once you do, everything else in the story sharpens. Milady is terrifying. Not because she's complicated, but because she isn't. There's no repentance arc, no moment of hesitation, no tragic backstory offered to soften her choices or excuse her cruelty. Dumas doesn't ask us to sympathize with her, and that's exactly what makes her so unsettling. She chooses evil freely, repeatedly, and without remorse. What makes her even more dangerous is the way she moves through the world. Her beauty is not incidental. It's weaponized. Charm, seduction, manipulation, each one used with precision. Men trust her, follow her, die for her. She leaves a trail of bodies behind her, not through brute force, but through persuasion, through lies spoken softly, through appearing harmless, desirable, even virtuous. As I was reading, I kept thinking about how often evil in literature and in life doesn't arrive snarling. It arrives smiling, beautiful, convincing, like the sirens of Greek mythology whose songs were irresistible and deadly all at once. Milady doesn't overpower, she entices. And by the time the truth is revealed, it's already too late. Reading this as a woman, I couldn't help but notice something else. The space for female agency in this story is narrow and costly. Women tend to fall into two extremes: the seductress or the victim. Power rarely survives without punishment. Constance's goodness costs her life. Milady's power cost her soul. Strength, intelligence, influence, none of it is neutral when carried by a woman in this world. And that tension matters. It's uncomfortable, but it's honest. Dumas doesn't give us easy answers here. He shows us the damage manipulation can do, the cost of unchecked evil, and the real casualties left behind when charm replaces conscience. Milady isn't tragic. She's not misunderstood. She's a reminder that some evil doesn't want healing. It wants control. And recognizing that difference is part of what makes the story feel heavier, darker, and more real than a simple swashbuckling adventure. The cost paid by the innocent. If Milady represents evil that chooses itself freely, then John Felton shows something far more unsettling: the destruction of someone who never meant to do wrong. Felton is loyal to a fault, idealistic, earnest. He wants to serve something noble, something good, and that's exactly what makes him vulnerable. Milady doesn't overpower him. She convinces him. She reframes reality, twists his sense of duty, and slowly replaces truth with devotion to her cause. By the time he acts, he believes he's doing the right thing. The assassination he carries out is not born of malice, but of manipulation. And the cost is immediate and final. Felton loses his life, not as a villain brought to justice, but as a pawn discarded once he's no longer useful. His story is a sobering reminder that evil doesn't just destroy its enemies. It consumes the well-meaning along the way. And then there's Constance Bonacieux. Constance is gentle, faithful, quietly brave. She doesn't scheme or manipulate. She serves, loves, and trusts. And she is almost completely unprotected in a world where power belongs to those willing to wield it ruthlessly. Her death ensures that the story does not end neatly or comfortably. There is no last-minute rescue, no reversal, no tidy bow tied on the final pages. Constance's loss changes the tone of the entire novel. Victory still comes, but it's tempered. Grief lingers. The characters must learn how to live in a world where justice was costly and innocence was not spared. That, perhaps, is one of the hardest truths Dumas gives us. Evil rarely collapses without taking something precious with it, and the price is often paid not only by the wicked, but also the faithful, the loyal, and the good. While this story is nothing more than a tale, reflecting on it leaves me deeply thankful that our story doesn't end the same way. Death is not the final word. Evil does not get the last victory. We live under a loving and just Heavenly Father who sees every loss, every injustice, every broken place, and who, in time, will make all things right. Justice, not revenge. What struck me most about Milady's end wasn't that she was stopped. It was how she was stopped. There is no mob, no chaos, no bloodthirsty rush to punish. Instead, a council is convened. Her crimes are named aloud, clearly, carefully. Witnesses speak, judges are present. The weight of what she has done is not minimized, but neither is it sensationalized. It is deliberate, measured, heavy. And that matters, because after everything my lady has done, after the manipulation, the destruction, the lives lost, this moment could have easily turned into revenge disguised as justice. But it doesn't. There is no celebration, no cruelty, no sense of triumph. The tone is solemn, almost grief-stricken, as if everyone present understands that this is not a victory, but a necessity. What stands out most to me is the moment before the sentence is carried out. My lady is offered forgiveness, not as a denial of guilt, not as an excuse for her actions, but as an acknowledgement of her humanity. She is held fully accountable, and yet she is not stripped of her dignity in the process. That balance is rare. Justice, in this moment, isn't loud or self-righteous. It doesn't gloat. It doesn't revel in punishment. It simply is. Firm, clear, final. And perhaps that's the quiet lesson here. Justice can be solemn without being vengeful. It can acknowledge the full weight of evil without becoming evil itself. Even in a story filled with swords and schemes, this ending reminds us that how justice is carried out matters just as much as the fact that it is. A sober ending. Evil is dealt with, but nothing is magically fixed. The story doesn't pretend that justice rewinds the clock or gives anyone their losses back. The dead are still gone, the innocent are still lost, and the people left behind have to figure out how to continue on while carrying that loss. That's what the epilogue gives us. Not a tidy bow, but a glimpse of what comes after. Time has passed. The characters have changed. They aren't trying to reclaim who they used to be. Instead, they've come to peace with what was, and each finds a new path shaped by memory, restraint, and hard-earned wisdom. Victory here doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels sober, quiet, real. The Three Musketeers doesn't end with cheers or triumph, but with the honest acknowledgement that even when evil is stopped, its impact doesn't simply disappear. Life goes on, altered, but still moving forward. I think this is why the story stayed with me long after I closed the book. Loyalty here costs something. It isn't convenient or comfortable. It demands sacrifice and restraint. Evil isn't misunderstood or softened by excuses. It's allowed to be fully what it is. Justice is carried out, but it doesn't feel satisfying in the way we sometimes expect. It leaves marks. It changes people. And growth doesn't come through swagger or bravado. It comes through memory, through wisdom, through choosing the harder, quieter path when it would have been easier to walk away. What surprised me most is how true all of this felt. Not bigger than life, not dramatic for drama's sake, just honest. The story doesn't offer easy answers. It reminds us that doing the right thing doesn't spare us from loss, and that maturity often looks a lot quieter than we expect. That honesty is what made it linger for me. It doesn't ask us to celebrate the ending. It asks us to sit with it and then keep walking forward. Changed, but not defeated. Classic starts versus the original. There's a real gift in retellings like the classic starts version. They spark interest, build confidence, and make these big, intimidating classics approachable, especially for kids. For my students, it was exactly that, a doorway into a story they might never have tackled otherwise. Classic Starts does an incredible job at keeping the highlights intact. The duels, the friendships, the drama, it's all there. That said, because so much happens in the original, it can feel a little jumpy, almost like a Spark Notes version. And it softens some of the more adult topics, affairs, murders, and other darker details, so it's appropriate for younger readers without losing the essence of the story. But the original is something you step into and never want to leave. It carries moral complexity, emotional weight, and questions that linger long after the last page. Something you just can't get from an abridged version, no matter how good. The children's version opened the door. The original invited me to stay. At the end of the day, this story endures not because everyone survives or because evil is perfectly vanquished, but because loyalty matters. The choices we make, the people we stand by, and the courage to carry each other through hardship, those are the moments that linger. And thankfully, we serve a God who sees it all, honors faithfulness, and ultimately makes all things right. That's all for now. Take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.